This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Haulin Assets podcast, episode number 136. Today, it's a heartfelt tribute to truck drivers. I'm your host, Craig. Over there, he's Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Good. That was some pretty good emotion you got going on there. The pause.
I'm a professional.
Yeah, you are. I can see.
And also, you know what? We're doing this because there's a National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. We'll talk about that. But it's easy for me to express this emotion because I'm shocked that we haven't done our own just straight up tribute to our listeners and all truck drivers so far. So
this should be it'll be a fun episode. I mean, there's definitely a soft spot and in my heart for truck drivers, and we get to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, Chris, before we get to all that, I'll just remind everybody to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com for full show notes, and also go to Facebook, where you can follow along our adventures and misadventures through photos, and of course we post these episodes there and gather comments from you all. Make sure you rate and review the podcast. That's very helpful. And then also go to motorcarrierhq.com. I've been mentioning this because of the tools and the people that are there to help you get your journey into owner-operatorhood started. I'm going with that as a term. But also, Chris, where do people go to get this swag that we are currently sporting? That's at Motor Carrier HQ,
it is,
right?
Yeah. In the shop feature, you can buy some of it there.
Chris was irresponsible and did not wear his hat, but I've got the very attractive Haulin Assets t-shirt. For those on YouTube, they can actually see this. And then the possibly, it used to be more attractive, my Motor Carrier HQ hat, but then I sweated through it.
You've worn it so much.
What? It's not a bad hat.
It is. Yeah, it's a good hat.
Call me Ashton Kutcher because apparently trucker hats are back in. So
you've outdone me again, making me look bad.
That is literally the opposite of my job, I think. Oops. Okay, Chris, before we do our tribute to the truckers, can we pour one out? Did anybody have a 40? When I need to pour one out for truck number one, because Chris, it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, it got sold. On Friday, just before the weekend started. It's gone. Can you believe that? My heart.
Yeah,
my heart's aching just a little bit.
The Green Monster.
The Green Monster. Me and the Green Monster. We spent a good solid year together. It was a good relationship too. I'm sad to see her go.
So, where was it at in terms of miles? Do you want to divulge what you sold it for?
It was about 940,000 miles, I believe, but there only about 300,000 of that was on the new engine. So
okay.
In trucking terms, I mean, it's got a fairly new engine in it.
So it's got a good life ahead of it.
Should have a good life ahead of it. Yep. So that's exciting. We sold. It took a long time to sell it, and probably because we priced it a little too high initially. The used truck market is not in a very good spot right now. We started asking right around 40,000. I think a little over 40,000 when we first tried selling it, and ended up selling it for 30.
Oh wow. Okay, that's less than I would have thought, honestly. Yeah. So yeah, that market really is a bit brutal at the moment.
Which is about half of what we paid for it. Let's see, 4.5 years ago.
Yeah. Gosh, what year was that? 2019?
2019.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Time flies when you're, podcasting, I guess. Yeah, that's the saying. All right. Anything else? Tales from the road before we dive in?
I have tales from the road. I went back out on the road again last week.
Good for you.
Yeah, I took a fun little trip down to Phoenix, Arizona. I think it's actually only the second time I've gone to Phoenix. I went to Phoenix. The only time I remember going to Phoenix was right before I stopped driving. It was one of my last runs, and it was one that I took my son on with me.
Oh, wow.
And
that must have been fun.
It was fun. It was a good run. But I decided this time I wanted to possibly go through Page, Arizona. You can either, the most common routes from Salt Lake to to Phoenix or through Page or through Las Vegas.
Right.
Well, Las Vegas is a few more miles, but it's all freeway miles, so it's a little easier run that way. And so I'd gone to Page in a car, never in a truck, obviously. So I threw out on Facebook, hey, what are your recommendations from people? And I got a lot of good recommendations.
Nice.
And so that kind of put me over the edge and decided to go that route. And I'm very glad that I did. It's a cool drive. It's very scenic. Lots of hills, which is kind of a pain in the butt with a fully loaded semi. It was like a 40,000 pound load. So almost, full on weight wise.
Wow.
But it was fun. It was pretty. So thanks to everybody who responded to that Facebook post and gave me your suggestions. I followed them all. And all of them except for somebody recommended Navajo fried bread.
Oh yeah.
I think going through Cameron, if I remember right. I wasn't able to do that. I wish I could have. So if I do it again, I'm gonna
stuff
try
is
to do that.
delicious.
It's so good. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was kind of bummed I wasn't able to make it work.
Yeah. Isn't it just fry bread, Chris? I feel like this is important. We need to tackle this and solve it. Let's get started on our topic today, and then by the end of the episode, I will be able to tell you whether it's supposed to be fried bread or fry bread.
Oh, that's a good question. I have no idea.
He
Spelling, grammar, not my strong suit. That's why you get paid the big bucks.
The big bucks. That's exact. That is correct. Yeah. I will effort that while we talk. Okay. Anything else?
Well, it was an interesting run. I want to talk a little bit about it.
It
had some hair on it. I got down to Phoenix. Everything went well on the way down. I had a load to bring me back and get down there and go to pick up the load that's bringing me back. And the shipper, when I backed to the door, like 20 minutes later, comes out and said, "Hey, we can't load this cargo onto a reefer." And I'm like, "What? We talked about this. This is like, you guys knew," or at least the broker. The broker knew we were coming in with a reefer trailer. And so to make a long story short, they truly couldn't load us. And
I'm struggling to figure out why. Sorry, go on with your story. We'll come back to why in just a minute.
Well, we can do the why.
Because when you told we started this whole thing back in 2019, you said I'm going to get the reefer trailer because then I can haul dry van stuff too.
Well, there are some dry van loads you can't take with a reefer.
Something that needs to not be refrigerated.
That and like reefers are a little narrower. They weigh a little more. And they also have the funky floor.
Right.
And that's usually the restriction. If it's not something palletized, dealing with that floor can be a pain in the butt.
Right.
And so my suspicion is that's more of what it was. It was probably the floor. So they couldn't load it, had to cancel it. The broker did pay us a truck ordered, not used fee, $150. And so we start looking for another load. And this is in Phoenix on a Wednesday. Or Thursday, let's see. It was Thursday morning.
Would this have been still in August in Phoenix? Oof.
Yeah, it was hot.
Yeah.
And so we couldn't find anything coming back to Salt Lake. And so we ended up expanding our search, looking all the way out to Los Angeles.
What?
Before we found anything. 350 miles away.
Whoa.
Same broker, same brokerage, and 350 miles away. And we talked to him, "Hey, you're sure you can load a reefer on this one? You're sure I'm not going to deadhead 350 miles and have the load canceled?" They're like, "Oh yeah, everything's good. This one's solid. You're fine."
I sense that there's more to the story, Chris.
Yeah, well, I'm am I leading it on that poorly? So they're all, yeah, this one's good. You're fine. And so I start the 350 miles. Halfway through it, I decided to take a break. It was going to be my only chance of the day we talked about fitness last time. My only chance of the day to be able to do a workout and take a shower. So I stop at truck stop in Quartzsite, Arizona.
Sure. Haven't we all?
Yeah. Beautiful place. 105 degrees in the middle of the day. I decide I'm going to do an easy 4-mile run. Slow pace. I'd run 8 miles the day before. So 4 miles is not
for you, this is not crazy.
Yeah, it's not a crazy run. Decide, okay, it's 105 degrees. It's going to kind of kick my butt a little bit. I'll take a bottle of water with me, which I usually don't If I'm running for less than an hour, I don't.
Yeah, it's 105.
Yeah. 2 miles into the run, I'm like dying. Start, walk, run. That sun sapped more energy out of me than I ever would have thought. And so anyways, it kicked my butt. Don't recommend running in 105 degree heat when you're not used to it. Like I'm not.
Do laps around your reefer.
Yeah, inside, just
Yeah,
back
exactly.
and forth sprints. Yeah, sprints inside the reefer. Much better idea.
See, that's me, problem solver. So okay, but you got a load in California.
Get to California. It's a load where I'm going from an XPO terminal to an XPO terminal.
Sure.
So Los Angeles to Salt Lake, and they want me to drop the trailer off at night. I'll come back in the morning. They'll have it loaded, and I can make it back home. About 2 hours after I drop off the trailer, I get a phone call from Jake. Hey, guess what? This load canceled.
Jeez.
I'm like, what? And so I'm going to skip a lot of details, but they end up, again, $150 truck order not used fee, which isn't even enough to pay a driver the 350 miles of deadhead. So we're going to try to fight that and try to get a little more out of that. To make a long story short, we end up finding another load, but I have to go 50 miles further into LA because at this point I'm like actually northwest of LA, so it's pretty easy to get. I'm pretty sure I can make it home in one day. Well, sure I can make it home in one day, but then I have to go another 50 miles the wrong way. Anyway, to make a long story short, I end up actually picking up that. I've said that like 5 times.
Careful with your words there, Chris.
Shut up, Craig. I end up picking up that load and making it all the way home that night. But the moral of the story with this is I'm expecting to get home on Thursday. I don't end up getting home till late Friday night. I use every second of my time allowed driving, including adverse driving conditions, because there was a flipping monsoon in Las Vegas. And traffic was terrible, but end up making it home. But my point is, it's a pretty good topic and reminder for today's topic that like trucking is not easy. Like I'm expecting to get home on Thursday. I don't end up getting home until Friday. I'm dealing with all these load cancellations, plans changing, going further into LA, dealing with LA traffic. I mean, it was one of those loads where I've talked about, it's important for me to drive every now and again so that I remember these kind of things. And, this was a perfect example of, a reminder, pain is the best teacher of what our drivers have to go through on a somewhat regular basis. I mean, you're not having this kind of thing happen all the time, but it's not crazy uncommon either. It happens. And
so when a driver calls you up and says, hey, Chris, here's what happens, you don't automatically roll your eyes and be like, okay, nice excuse.
No. Yeah, I've been there. It sucks. Yeah. I know. Those kind of things aren't any fun. So
fair enough.
That was my week last week.
So that was it was a long way to say y'all got a hard job.
Yeah.
Hopefully every other week we come along for, usually 30 to 45 minutes and make your week a little bit better. But speaking of making your week a little bit better, should we talk about what is it? It's National Truck Drivers Appreciation Week.
Yeah.
Do you say appreciation or appreciation?
Appreciation.
Okay. All right.
Is that the right? Am I doing it right?
It doesn't matter.
Potato.
Potato. All
right.
Oh, by the way, fun fact: fry bread, one word. It's actually one word.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Fry bread.
Yeah. According to the good and great Wikipedia, our Lord, our online Lord Wikipedia.
Yeah, Wikipedia knows everything.
Anyway, okay. So, how do you want to kick this off? Besides saying, "Hey, great job, guys."
Well, I want to kick it off by saying everybody that's a truck driver knows this. Trucking is it's one of the most challenging and demanding jobs that there is out there. It's really a tough job. And really, there's no better time than right now, National Truck Drivers Appreciation Week, that starts on this Sunday, the 10th, to really kind of talk a little bit about that and express our gratitude for what the trucking industry does and what truck drivers do, specifically truck drivers. They're the backbone of the industry, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get into it. But, one of the things that's kind of interesting, as I start kind of doing some research and prepping for this episode. So every year, the American Trucking Association has a theme for National Truck Drivers Week. And this year, it's Miles of Gratitude. And so I'm thinking about Miles of Gratitude. That's an interesting thing. What exactly does Miles of Gratitude mean? So I'm going to ask you that question. What does Miles of Gratitude mean?
Hopefully it's a measurement of the gratitude we all have for our truck drivers. Right?
That's kind of along the lines of what I was thinking. I was thinking about it, and I'm like, okay, when I tell when my kids are really young, and I tell them how much I love them, I'm like, I put my, you stretch your arms out, and you're like, I love you this much, and so.
I love you. 350 deadhead miles to go pick up a canceled load in LA.
So that's what the Miles of Gratitude. It's like way more than this much. We appreciate you guys way more than you love your kids.
I'm sure
kids,
that's
I'm just
true.
Kidding. That's not true. We do appreciate you lots. Miles and miles of gratitude.
So what does it mean?
I'm guessing that's what it means.
Oh,
I don't know.
There's no real. You were teeing this up like okay, but here's what they really meant.
No, I don't know. I'm assuming that's kind of something along those lines. It's not just a little gratitude, not an inch, not a foot, but miles.
In real terms though, first of all, I got to say, for the last 5 years or so, maybe 6 years, I've been on this kick where I cycle through different words and terms and phrases as kind of like my centering principle. And gratitude has been the one for a while now. Like I said, 5-6 years now. I've been reading a lot about gratitude. I think it's really valuable. It's something that we should try to cultivate as much as possible about whatever can possibly deserve it, right? So that's point number one. I like the idea of just kind of thinking about that, concentrating on that for a little while. What do we have to be grateful for when it comes to truck drivers? And the other thing I got to say, Chris, is that I love reading up on layman economics. Okay, I love just comprehensible economics, right? Because there are some incomprehensible things out there, right?
Economists think they're smart.
But it's the more I learn about it, the more I come to appreciate or be grateful for certain things. Like the intermodal shipping container freaking changed the world. This thing was revolutionary, and we wouldn't have, half of what we do now without something like the intermodal shipping container. And, you dive into these things like that. Asphalt. Asphalt is one of the most mind-blowing and consequential developments in all of technological history, as are trucks, and therefore the truckers that drive them. Yeah?
Yeah, they're pretty amazing. And kind of along with your gratitude spiel, to go with last podcast theme of mental health, I think having that gratitude and being grateful for things is one of those things that helps with your mental health too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, speaking of intermodal containers, I'll put this on social media at some point, but the load in LA that I ended up canceling, where the XPO terminal is, there is, I don't know what it is, but they had the biggest stacks of containers I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
And I took some pictures of them. If you looked at it at the right angle, it almost looked like 3 container ships just floating on the land.
Oh.
They were probably 7 tall and a couple hundred yards deep. It was crazy.
That's
pretty cool.
That's a lot. I'd love to see that picture.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, Chris, in preparation for this, you went ahead and gathered up some interesting statistics, some fun facts for us to entertain and delight, right?
Yeah.
So what do you got? What do you got for me?
I got most of these statistics from trucking, the American Trucking Association, trucking.org.
Right.
But yeah, I thought these are fascinating. It kind of shows, we're going to talk a little bit about how important truck drivers are to the American economy and really our American way of life. And I think these statistics kind of help capture that a little bit. Just the sheer volumes, like mind blowing. So first one, 940.8 billion in gross freight revenue from trucking. That's 80.7% of the nation's freight bill in 2022.
So, okay, help me understand this. That means that 80.7% of the economic or the shipping happens through trucks.
Yes.
Is that what I understand?
Revenue based. Yeah.
Revenue. Yeah. The revenue from.
So almost $1 trillion in revenue.
That's incredible.
It's insane.
And so, what else would they be counting? They'd be counting air freight, ships.
Shipping containers, rail. Rail would probably be the next biggest one.
Interesting. Okay. I just went and drove past Golden Spike here in Utah. I'd never been there before.
Yeah, it's way out there.
I don't want to.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
I don't want to derail us, Chris. What else you got?
11.46 billion tons of freight hauled. And that's 72.6% of the total domestic tonnage shipped.
Okay, so 80% of the revenue, 72% of the tonnage. Okay, because a ship can take, a lot. Or a train can take a lot.
Yeah, a train can take a lot.
Yeah. Okay, wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And this is, notice we did not say pounds. We said tons. Billions of tons. That's incredible. Yeah. Okay, what else?
$29.12 billion paid by commercial trucks in federal and state fuel taxes in 2021. It's a lot of money. $29.12 billion.
That's there are a lot of potholes on our nation's highways.
You'd think we'd be able to fix that. That doesn't even take into account the heavy vehicle highway use tax we all just paid.
Yeah.
Okay. $550 per truck.
So that one is $29 billion paid in
fuel taxes.
And so that one's less fun.
Yeah, that's not fun. This one's fun though.
Okay.
327.48 billion miles traveled by single unit and combination commercial trucks.
What's a combination commercial
truck?
truck?
That's like truck and trailer.
Combination
is truck and trailer.
Okay.
So single unit would be like a box truck.
Got it.
Something like that.
Okay.
So that I did this math myself.
Yeah.
This is a fun one. That's 3,521 trips to the sun.
To the sun.
To the sun.
To the sun.
To
not
the
sun.
Moon. Not the moon. To the sun. 3,521 trips to the sun.
That's just in the U.S.
Yeah.
In 2021.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
That's a lot of miles.
The sun is like light minutes away.
Yeah, it's not close. Thank goodness, or we'd get sunburn worse.
Arizona would be even tougher
I was
to handle.
Say, I really wouldn't be able to run in the middle of the day if we were much closer.
Let's make this a science podcast. Science and economics, Chris. This seems like a really good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, can I do the next one?
Yeah, you
because
bet.
I love this one.
Okay.
I love this one. How many active motor carriers are out there? The answer: 750,000 active motor carriers. Now, this is where it gets cool. Okay, first of all, that's a lot. Then you break it down by how many operate how many trucks. You count owner-operators and fleets of 10 or fewer trucks, and you're looking at 95.8%. That's 95 point. They call it 96% of the trucks out on the road are operated by owner-operators or tiny fleets. If you count small fleets, not tiny fleets, but small fleets with 100 or fewer trucks, then we're bumping up to 99.7%. I guess I shouldn't say of trucks on the road. That's 99.7% of the motor carriers.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, it's funny that we call a fleet with 100 trucks essentially
a small fleet. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not so small.
Says the guy with 11 trucks. Right?
Yeah, 11. I mean, that's not terribly small either. But in the grander scheme of things, we're definitely no FedEx.
That's true. Or
a Walmart.
I was going to say Amazon. I swear that's all I see out on the road these days. Okay, last one. Drivers.
3.54 million drivers. 3,540,000 drivers.
That is more than 1% of the U.S. population, men, women, and children.
Yeah. And that's like the population of Utah. That's roughly the population of Utah.
Yeah. So 3.5 million drivers. Essentially, if you broke it down to all working adults, I'm trying to do some quick math here, you're looking at like 2.5% of working adults are driving trucks. That's incredible.
That's a lot.
That's, you know what? I got a little bit of a chuckle when you sent the topic over for the day. You say, we're going to talk about National Truck Driver Appreciation Week. And I was like, oh boy, everybody gets an appreciation week. And then I start looking at the numbers and I go, holy smokes. Of course we need a Truck Driver Appreciation Week. This is incredible.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's pretty amazing what the trucking industry does for the United States. I mean, it touches, I don't care who you are, it touches every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Unless you're a hermit living in the woods in a cabin that you built by yourself from the surrounding woods.
Even then, I bet I could find 100 things around your little cabin that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of the macro numbers. Okay. Looking at trucking as a whole across the country, but it's once you are a truck driver, once you sit behind the wheel and you're hurtling down the highway at 65, it's not about the macro numbers anymore. It's about you. And Chris, you did this for a year. And I know that there were things, well, this last week's stories kind of illustrated, there are things that are not always so great about trucking. It's hard. It's unpredictable sometimes. You know, it's a tough job, but there are things about it that are pretty great.
There are.
Right?
Yeah.
So what were some of your favorite things when you were out on the road, or just in general as you've gotten to know the trucking industry better?
Just seeing the country is one of the coolest. Like, you know, that whole drive down, you know, through Page down to Phoenix. You know, I got to see the Glen Canyon Dam, and driving across the Colorado River is really, really cool. Seeing the dam, I actually, after you cross the bridge, there was just enough of a spot that I could pull over, park, and walk the bridge, and just took some pictures. Just absolutely beautiful, amazing scenery. There's another spot where I pulled off where it almost looks like you're going through a canyon, then you just drop down off the face of the earth. Really cool. Just get to see all these really cool things all across the country that, you know, unless I was driving a truck, there's no other way to really see it. And that's cool.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things. Probably seeing the country for me was like one of the coolest things.
Did you keep track of how many states you got to drive through?
I did, yeah. In fact, this last trip to LA was the first time I'd actually taken a truck into California.
Really?
It was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what, for, you know, there are reasons for that.
Yeah, there are
We
reasons
don't
for
talk a lot about California during National Truck Driver Appreciation
I was just going
Week.
to piss everybody off.
We won't get it. We're not doing that right now, Chris. Positivity.
Change the subject. Change the subject immediately.
So do you know how many states off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. It's most of them, like most of the ones in the Northeast I haven't been to. So like Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont.
Yeah.
And then Florida is another big one I have not been to yet.
Okay.
But I think just about everything else, so the continental 48, you know, I think it's like 42, 43 that I've been to, something like that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm hearing, I can actually hear them, Chris. The drivers that are listening to us right now going, oh boy, you want hot in Arizona, you got to go down to Florida where it's humid, right? But I don't care how humid it is. When you open up that door of your cab and it's 115 in Tucson, it punches you right in the face.
Especially if you're not standing in the if you're standing in the sun, it'll suck the life out of you.
Sorry, I derailed you again. Where are we at? Stuff that you like.
Yeah, and the freedom of the open road is awesome. You know,
Sure.
you kind of get a little bit of, you know, feel the wind blowing through your hair type thing. You feel free. Like that's just, it's kind of hard to explain until you've done it. But
I often use the word meditative, you know, so it's great to have a day where you're sitting behind a wheel and that's what you're doing. Yeah. Now, granted, I don't do this all day, every day, like a lot of these guys do. So, you know, my perception is going to be a little bit different, but still you're not doing anything else. You're not worried about anything else other than keeping yourself and your load safe.
When you're driving down a pristine road, the scenery's good. It's almost like therapy. When you're not dealing with like some of the challenges like traffic and some of those things, and it's a beautiful day, and everything's running smooth. It's therapeutic.
Yeah. It's I complain all the time about I-80, but if you're driving west on I-80 through Wyoming into the sunset on a partly cloudy day, it's glorious. Yeah, it's glorious. Okay. Anything else?
A couple other things. A sense of accomplishment. Like when you take a load safely from Salt Lake to Georgia, and you've traversed that far of the country in a relatively short period of time and delivering a product that is going to be meaningful to people. To me, that's a sense of accomplishment. It's like, it's pretty cool to think that you've taken that product that distance in a relatively short period of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
That makes a lot of sense.
And another fun thing is just the people that you meet along the road. You meet cool shippers, you meet unique people, and that's pretty fun.
I just heard the real trucking was the friends we made along the way.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I think that's legit. That's a good one. It's one of those things that, I'm a naturally introverted guy, believe it or not. I know that I'm pretty gregarious on the show and whatnot, but I'm pretty quiet and reserved, and I kind of sit by myself most of the time. And it can be tricky for us introverts to open our mouths and make friends and kind of just try to break the ice with somebody. Do it. It's worth it.
It is.
You'll have a much happier time out on the road. Even if, I think I talked an episode or two ago about 3-hour friends. Go make yourself a 1-hour friend at the truck stop, while you guys are waiting for the shower to open up or whatever.
I'm the same way. I'm more of an introvert than I am an extrovert. But when you've been on the road for 24 hours and you haven't talked to anybody, it kind of becomes a little bit easier to be an extrovert because you kind of crave that social interaction a little bit. So that it becomes easier when you see somebody in a shipper's lounge or something, or in the truck stop to talk and say, hey, what's going on? How you doing? Where are you coming from? Well, you meet a lot of interesting, cool people.
And they are interesting. They are cool. And let me ask you this question, Chris. Have you found that truck drivers as a group share any common characteristics? Obviously everybody's different, so you're going to get a wide array of the type of people out on the road, but, or maybe I'll put it to you this way. What did you notice about your character that either you relied on or needed to build up better in order to succeed out on the road, especially when you were out for that first year? What does it mean to be a truck driver?
I think one of the things you kind of have to get used to is just, that alone time. You have to be good with, like, I've got one of my very best friends is a complete extrovert, and he would go batshit crazy within like 12 hours of sitting in a truck, not talking to anybody.
Yeah.
And, so, you've got to kind of get used to that. You've got to be good with that. And then, one of the things that I think kind of sticks out about me about that seems to be a little bit more of a common thread with truckers is, they are very proud of what they do, and proud of the impact that they have on the U.S. economy, and that they are doing a hard job, and so that. You don't see that in every industry. You don't see that in every kind of job type where people really are proud of who they are and what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hey, I worked for a marketing firm for 5 years, and you do not have that same sense of accomplishment, when you're like, hey, we sold this many, worthless doodads or subscriptions or whatever. It's like, oh, well. Yeah. But if you can actually haul a load of goods that people need and want, that's a different feeling. And
there are a lot of other characteristics that are very common within the trucking industry, like for example, hardworking. They're super hardworking people. Like I said initially, it's a very challenging and demanding job, and I can't think of many other industries out there where the expectation is that you're going to work up to 14 hours a day. You're going to deal with really weird schedules. One day you may be driving in the middle of the day, and the next day you have to be driving in the middle of the night. Like it's hard to make those transitions and be able to operate safely, and not a whole lot of people can do that, all while being away from home for an extended period of time.
Right.
truck drivers are truly some of the hardest working people out there.
Yeah, and very independent.
Very independent. Yep.
Yeah. What other characteristics do you see?
Kind of along those same lines, they're willing to do jobs that a lot of other people aren't. They're dependable. They're waking up, they're making their deliveries on time, showing up to a receiver on time, not having to be, you're not having to have their hands held. There are drivers out there that are like that, but for the most part, they're doing this on their own. They're taking charge.
If we think about it this way, yes, there are exceptions to that rule, but do they last?
No,
they don't.
Not
last.
usually.
And if they do, they're going to do it at a low-paying rate, maybe local.
Yeah, no, they don't, because usually in those situations they're miserable and they're making everybody else around them miserable, and so they don't last in the company they're at. They typically don't last in the industry. That's it. And another thing that's pretty cool about truck drivers is they're dealing with government regulations. They navigate that well, even though it's a challenge and usually not fun.
You got to stay pretty zen about that stuff.
You do, yeah.
At a certain point, just let it go. Yeah, okay, I'll deal with the regulation. All right. What else?
And the last thing that I've got, and this is like, it seems kind of funny, but it's really pretty badass, honestly. One of the cool things about a truck driver is they can parallel freaking park a 70-foot semi with a tractor and a trailer like it's no problem.
Yep.
When more than half of the Americans out there can't do the same thing with a damn car.
With a 2-door Mazda.
Yeah. Like most Americans can't parallel park, and these guys can parallel park a semi truck.
Yeah.
I think that's a skill set that most people can't even dream of having.
It's funny you say it that way, because you were leaving the studio, a few weeks ago maybe, and we were joking back and forth as you were walking out, and you laughed and said, "Oh, we got to get you into one of these trucks one of these days, right?" And you walked away, and I went in, and my imagination starts going, what would that be like if I were actually driving? And the glorious open road, heading off into the sunset, that sounds great. I can do it. You put me in a yard or ask me to parallel park one of those things, I'm out. I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore.
It takes a certain set of skills, that's for sure.
I used to do that with box trucks. I worked for U-Haul for a while, so I would park box trucks. That's not the same, Chris.
No,
that's not the same. Anything else you want to cover on this topic of appreciating our drivers and maybe our trucks themselves?
I want one little thing just to kind of help bring this all together and put things into perspective a little bit. If you have any doubt of how important truck drivers are to America, think about what happened during the COVID pandemic. If you remember right, when the COVID pandemic first hit, tons of stuff got shut down. And in fact, the government said, okay, there's these specific industries that can continue to operate because they are extremely critical. And let's talk about, some of those industries that ended up getting shut down. Education, kids essentially had to be taught from home, and that didn't work very well.
I was going to say,
trust me,
taught in quotation marks.
Yeah, taught. So education, as we knew it, shut down. Most retailers shut down. Tourism shut down. Mass transit shut down. That's buses, airlines, everything. Auto manufacturers shut down. In-person dining at restaurants shut down. Sporting events, no NFL, no college football, no basketball, all that shut down. And even a lot of medicine shut down. Like the only thing that hospitals took care of were emergencies. Like there was no, if you needed a knee replaced, that was shut down. So tons of these things that are typically considered important were shut down. What happened to the trucking industry?
It kept going as hard as it could.
Not only did it keep going, it was not one of those that shut down, but they actually relaxed the regulations. The hours of service, basically under the emergency declaration, for the most part, for many things, especially like what we did, reefer stuff, food resupply, they completely lax the regulations. You could drive basically as many hours as you need to, as long as you felt safe, and you didn't have to like essentially shut the truck down until you got to wherever you were delivering, and then you had to do a 10-hour reset. So I made it across the country like in record time, like half the time it would, not maybe half, but pretty close to, half the time it would normally take.
Right.
Because, not only did they not shut trucking down, but they tried to expand it and make it, like we had to work as hard as we could to keep, America supplied with their essentials.
So what you're saying is America doesn't run on Dunkin', it runs on diesel.
It runs on diesel, yeah, there you go.
All right. Excellent. Chris, final thoughts?
A couple, one really big final thought is, I've driven for a year, so I don't have nearly the experience. I haven't done this nearly as much as a lot of other drivers out there. And I've spent most of my, career in the trucking industry, not in a driver's seat, but in kind of one of those ancillary positions that supports the trucking industry. So, and there's a lot of folks that do that, us at Motor Carrier HQ, shippers, receivers, the warehouse workers, dispatchers, mechanics, there's a lot of people that support the trucking industry. And one of the things that I try to reiterate to people all the time that are in those roles is that none of us would exist if it wasn't for truck drivers. We all have our jobs because there are truck drivers. And, that's how critical and important this role as a truck driver is in our nation. Nothing would get moved. The economy would freeze if it wasn't for truck drivers. And so, like, we all need to recognize that and realize that and do what we can to thank drivers for what they do on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's gets into the gratitude thing we talked about, right?
Yeah.
I know we're almost literally preaching to the choir here, but if there is anybody listening who maybe doesn't feel like they quite grasp how big a deal this is, go to some place like trucking.org and find some of these statistics. Read a book. There are a million articles out there about how vital logistics is to making your life possible to live the way it is.
Yeah.
It's important to have that gratitude.
The trucking industry is like the backbone of the U.S. economy. Mm-hmm. And truck drivers are the backbone of the trucking industry. If it wasn't for truck drivers, we'd basically be like a blob of blood and guts, like strewn out on the floor. Like there'd be no substance to anything if it wasn't for truck
drivers. As
though
it had been hit by, something.
a freight train.
Oh, sure.
Because a truck driver would never do that.
That's exactly right. Excellent. Well, good, Chris. I know I already said final thoughts, but I think, what else do you have on this?
All I want to do at this point is just thank, first and foremost, I want to thank the team of Haulin Assets drivers out there. Larry, Trudy, Tyler, Shelley, Jeannie, Thomas, Paula, Charles, and Joel. They're our current drivers. Thank you to them, and thank you to all you other 3.54 million drivers out there. I truly appreciate everything that you do. So from the bottom of my heart and from the bottom of the heart of my family and the Motor Carrier HQ family, thank you for everything that you do. We truly appreciate and understand your sacrifice, and thank you for everything. I can't say thanks enough. It is really truly a heartfelt gratitude for all that you guys do.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of hard to improve on that. So I guess the impact tip today, Chris. The impact tip is, hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take the rest of the day off.
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah, if you can.
All right, Chris. Well, I like that. It's good. It's one of those, I'll no longer ever roll my eyes at, Truck Driver Appreciation Week. I might roll my eyes at some of the other appreciation weeks that we have, but not this one.
It's definitely deserved and warranted.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks to all of you for driving, and thank you very much for listening as well. Kind of along the lines of what you're talking about with the support crew around trucking. Well, consider us a very, far out ancillary version of that. We wouldn't exist without this industry, obviously. And so we appreciate you driving, and we really appreciate that you listen. Make sure that you share us if you like what we do. And other than that, Chris, I already gave my spiels at the top. So HaulinAssetsLLC.com, motorcarrierhq.com. And with that,
we'll see you next time.
All right.